They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from those you love most. I used to think that was just a dramatic line from some movie. Until it became my reality. My name is Nathan, 32 years old, quiet, predictable, loyal to a fault. I built a life based on trust in my family, my wife, and my brother. I thought love and blood meant something. I thought doing the right thing would always count for something. While I spent sleepless nights by my father's hospital bed, hoping he'd live to see another week, I didn't know that back home, my own brother was keeping my wife company in ways no brother ever should. And when the truth finally came out, they didn't flinch. They didn't apologize. They smiled. But I wasn't broken. I was done pretending. And this is how I made sure they'd never forget what they did. When I married Alina, I truly believed I had won the lottery. She was everything I wasn't. Charming, spontaneous, magnetic. The kind of woman who could walk into a room and have everyone orbiting her within 5 minutes. And somehow, she chose me, the introverted software engineer who thought sarcasm was a love language and preferred dogs to people. We met in college. She was majoring in communications and I was buried in JavaScript and databases. It was one of those cliché stories, guy spills coffee on girl's laptop in the library, ends up paying for repairs, and somehow fumbles into a date. But what started as an accident turned into 4 years of something that felt like a miracle. We got married 2 years after graduation. A small ceremony. I remember watching her walk down the aisle, her eyes locked on mine and thinking, this is it. This is forever. The first few years were good. Honestly, they were better than good. We had routines that felt like rituals. Sunday morning pancakes. Tuesday night trivia at our favorite bar. She'd send me voice notes throughout the day, silly updates about her coworkers, her boss, or a song she heard that reminded her of our first road trip. We weren't flashy. No big fights. No screaming matches. Just the occasional disagreement about laundry or what to binge, watch next. I thought that meant we were solid. And then, when my father got sick, she supported me. At least, that's what I thought. My dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It hit us like a freight train. I dropped everything, took leave from work and moved back and forth between our place and the hospital. There were nights I didn't sleep and days I forgot to eat, but Alina never complained. At least, not to my face. She said all the right things. Take your time. Your dad needs you. Don't worry, I've got everything covered here. And I believed her. I never questioned the late work meetings, the impromptu overnight stays at her office during marketing rollouts, or the growing emotional distance. I told myself she was just stressed, that this was temporary. After all, it was temporary. My father's prognosis made that brutally clear. But in hindsight, the signs were there. I just chose not to see them. There was a night, 3 months into Dad's treatment, when I came home unexpectedly to pick up some documents. It was almost midnight. The lights were off, but there were 2 wine glasses in the sink and a faint cologne I didn't recognize in the air. Elena wasn't home. She texted me 10 minutes later, sorry babe, staying at the office again. Client crisis. Love you. I stared at the sink, at the glasses, at the second fork on the counter. And for the first time in years, I felt something crack. I didn't know it yet, but that was the night the truth began to surface. After that night, I couldn't unsee things. It was like someone had handed me a different pair of glasses. Ones that made me notice the tiny shifts I'd ignored before. The way Alina no longer looked up from her phone when I entered the room. How she stopped asking about my dad, or even pretending to listen, when I talked about the hospital. Conversations that used to feel effortless now felt scripted, transactional. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, but it felt automatic, mechanical, like muscle memory, not affection. I told myself I was being paranoid. That grief was making me hypersensitive. But I started paying attention. Her wardrobe changed. She'd always dressed well, but now she was going out in heels and tight dresses for late meetings, looking like she was headed to a cocktail party, not a boardroom. She started locking her phone. That stung more than I'd like to admit. We'd always had an unspoken trust. Our phones lay around unlocked, unbothered. Now, it was always face down. Always with her. I remember one night in particular. It was Friday. We used to call it our no phone night. A tradition we started in our 2nd year of marriage. Every Friday, we'd unplug, cook dinner together, and watch whatever show we were obsessed with at the time. It was sacred. Ours. That Friday I tried to bring it back. I came home early, stopped by her favorite bakery, picked up her go-to wine, and made her favorite lemon butter salmon from scratch. She walked in, glanced at the setup, and said flatly, "Oh, I thought I told you I had a work dinner tonight." She hadn't. I swallowed the disappointment. "Just 20 minutes," I said, smiling. "Have a bite, then you can go." She sat down, barely touched the food, and checked her phone every 2 minutes. I tried to make conversation. Told her about a funny moment Dad had at the hospital, how he flirted with a nurse just to get extra pudding. She didn't even smile. When she finally left, she didn't kiss me goodbye. I stood there, staring at the barely touched plates, the unopened wine, and the candle burning for no one. And I remember thinking, this isn't my wife. This is a stranger wearing her face. I started noticing patterns. She'd leave for the gym with her bag in the morning, but return with freshly washed hair and perfume. Her gym didn't have showers. She took calls on the balcony and spoke in a voice softer than I'd heard in months. When I approached once, she turned sharply, startled, and hung up mid-sentence. And yet, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because deep down, part of me still wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe she was just tired, just overwhelmed, just trying to cope with everything like I was. But another part, the part that had stood by my father's side as he faced death with dignity, knew the truth. And that truth was starting to take shape. The moment I admitted something was wrong, I couldn't stop looking. I didn't snoop at first. That's not who I was. I respected privacy, even in the middle of suspicion. But there's a limit to how much doubt a person can swallow before it curdles into something else. It started with the laundry. One Sunday, while doing the wash, hers included, because old habits die hard, I found a receipt tucked into the pocket of her jeans. It was for dinner, a very expensive Italian restaurant downtown, a place we used to go on anniversaries. The date was from last Tuesday, the same night she told me she had a team meeting that ran late. The receipt had 2 entrees and 2 glasses of wine. No clients listed, no corporate card used. Just a personal charge. I didn't say anything. I folded the jeans and placed them neatly in her drawer. But I wrote the date down. Then I did something I never thought I would. I checked our shared Google account. We had location sharing turned on from years ago, back when it was cute to see where each other was. For restaurant pickups, airport arrivals, and little surprises. Now, it felt like accessing a stranger's life. That Tuesday, her phone had pinged from the restaurant. But not just there. It also logged stops at a boutique hotel. Twice in 1 week. Once in the afternoon, again late at night. Other days showed similar patterns. Her calendar said, client site, but her phone history said, Lackview Inn. Suddenly, I wasn't a husband anymore. I was an investigator, a silent observer piecing together a betrayal that had already happened. Then came the burner phone. I wasn't even looking for it, just clearing out her gym bag to throw it in the wash when a small, older iPhone tumbled out, unfamiliar, scratched, locked. I froze. It was warm. I held it like it might explode. When she got home later, I asked casually, hey, I found an old phone in your bag. Dead battery. The look in her eyes told me everything. Her hand shot out fast. That's private. She snapped, snatching it away like it was state secrets. Why are you going through my things? I wasn't, I said, stunned. It literally fell out. She turned away, phone clutched to her chest. This is why I can't talk to you anymore. You're always suspicious. Always watching me. Gaslighting one-on-one. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Because I didn't need to. That night, while she was in the shower, I finally opened her main phone. The passcode hadn't changed. There was a text from a contact saved as, work lead. That read, you taste like sin, can't wait for next time. Tell him you're at yoga again. I stared at the screen, feeling something inside me go quiet. Not rage. Not even heartbreak. Just silence. The kind of silence you feel when you've been holding your breath underwater for too long. And even then, a part of me was still begging for this to be a mistake. But it wasn't. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the couch in the dark, watching the blinking light of the Wi-Fi router and wondering how much of my life had been a lie. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her yet, not until I knew who the other man was. And I was going to find out. I was prepared for a stranger. Some slick guy from her office. A gym trainer. Maybe even an ex resurfaced in some pathetic. We just reconnected. Fantasy. But nothing could have prepared me for him. It started with the burner phone. I wasn't even looking for it. I was clearing out her gym bag to toss it into the wash when a small, older iPhone tumbled out. Unfamiliar, scratched, and locked. I froze. It was warm. Recently used. That night, when she was in the shower, I sat down with it and stared at the lock screen. No Face ID. Just a 4-digit passcode. I took a breath and typed in something I hadn't thought of in years. 0412. Her old dorm room number. The passcode she'd used on everything back in college. Her phone, her bike lock, our first apartment mailbox. The screen unlocked instantly. There weren't many texts, but what was there was enough. One stood out. You're the only one who ever understood me. He never saw who I really was. Another. Same time tomorrow. He's still at the hospital. We'll have the house to ourselves. Then came the photo. Just one. Taken from our bedroom. My bedroom. 2 people, entwined. Her face pressed to someone's chest, his hand brushing her cheek. I zoomed in. and the world stopped. It was Daniel, my brother. I stared at the screen, hoping I was wrong. A trick of the light. Bad angle. Anything. But no. I knew that scar on his collarbone. I remembered when he got it falling off a skateboard when we were 13. I knew those hands. Hands that helped me move into my first apartment. Hands that built the crib when Alina and I still dreamed of starting a family. His hands were on my wife. The betrayal hit different. With Elena, it was pain. With Daniel, it was desecration. I couldn't breathe. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring into a reality I never wanted to believe. The pieces began falling into place with cruel clarity. The missed calls. The way Elena and Daniel always shared inside jokes at family dinners. How he checked in on her while I was at the hospital with Dad. How she laughed too easily when he was around. How I thought I was just being paranoid. I thought he was helping. I thought he was my brother. I wanted to scream, but there was no one to scream at. Just walls. And silence. The next morning, I called in sick. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't return Elena's texts. Instead, I called a lawyer. I sent him everything. Screenshots, location logs, receipts, and the photo. I asked him to file for divorce and freeze our joint accounts. No confrontation, no second chances, just action. That afternoon, Daniel pulled into my driveway. He stepped out of his car like it was any other Tuesday. Coffee in hand. That same easy smirk on his face. "Yo," he said. "Are you good?" I looked at him. "My brother, you should go." He blinked. "What's going on?" I know. His face dropped. "Get off my property." He opened his mouth to speak, but I turned and walked inside, closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, letting the silence settle in again. But this time, it wasn't helpless. It was the silence before a storm. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted emails to my lawyer, sent screenshots, asked questions I never thought I'd need to ask, and when morning came, I wasn't numb anymore. I was ready. The weeks that followed were a blur: lawyers, paperwork, silence. And then finally, the court date arrived. I got there early. Not because I wanted to, because I couldn't sleep. Anxiety had shaken me out of bed at 5 a.m., and by 7, I was parked outside the building, staring at the doors like they might swallow me whole. Frank, my lawyer, told me to dress clean but not flashy. Navy suit, white shirt, no emotion unless I ask for it, he said. I sat in the courtroom, fingers locked together, heart ticking like a time bomb. The place was quiet. Too quiet. That kind of silence that hums in your teeth and makes you feel like you're the only one breathing. Then the door opened, and there they were. Elena in a soft white dress, because of course she wore white. The irony would have been funny if it didn't make me sick. She looked polished, innocent, like she was trying to sell a brand she didn't even believe in anymore. But it wasn't her that got me. It was Daniel, walking beside her, holding her hand. Not hiding it, not ashamed, just smirking. I didn't flinch, I didn't speak. But my fists tightened so hard under the table, I thought I might crack bone. Frank leaned toward me. Let them bury themselves. They sat down across the aisle like this was just another meeting. Daniel refused to look at me. Elena stole glances every few seconds, maybe checking to see if I'd break, cry, explode. I gave her nothing. Then the hearing began. Their lawyer, some young guy who looked like he still got carded buying wine, stood up and started spinning a tale that made me question my grasp on reality. It was like watching a Hallmark script unravel. Sometimes love finds us in unexpected ways, he said, with the seriousness of a eulogy. What started as innocent support turned into something deeper, and while unfortunate, their connection is real. Their connection. Not betrayal. Not infidelity. Not a knife in my back. Connection. Alina started crying. On cue. I was so lost, she said, voice trembling. Nathan was always gone. His father was dying, and he did what he had to do, but I was alone. I didn't mean for it to happen. Cue the tear dab with a tissue. Daniel placed a hand on her back, solemnly, like a noble protector. The judge glanced at me. Frank stood up. Your Honor, he said calmly, before we continue this fairy tale, I'd like to enter some documentation into evidence. He opened his briefcase and began placing papers on the table. One by one. Deliberate. Surgical. Screenshots of messages, hotel receipts, bank GPS logs, time-stamped photos from security cameras, including the one in our bedroom. The room changed. The air thinned. Frank spoke like a surgeon with a scalpel. These aren't just mistakes, Your Honor. They are deliberate deceptions. Coordinated. Repeated. Financially damaging. Emotionally manipulative. And, he paused for effect, they occurred well before the date of separation. He handed over a printed conversation. Elena's handwriting. Let him keep burning himself out at the hospital. By the time he realizes, it'll be too late. The judge raised an eyebrow, turned slowly to Daniel and Elena. This court does not look kindly upon strategic dishonesty, he said flatly. Especially when it undermines both legal contracts and familial boundaries. Then came the ruling. The prenuptial agreement stood, Elena would walk away with nothing, no alimony, no half of my assets. The court even suggested she may be liable for financial misconduct regarding joint accounts, pending further review. Daniel tried to speak. The judge silenced him with a look sharper than any gavel. And just like that, they weren't smirking anymore. Elena started sobbing. Daniel looked like a man who had just realized too late that he brought a butter knife to a sword fight. Me? I stayed seated, still, calm, letting the weight of their silence wash over them. When the hearing ended, I didn't even look back. I just stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out of that courtroom without a word. But inside I was finally breathing again. After the courtroom emptied, I didn't go home. I walked, block after block. No music, no phone, just me and the sound of traffic and my own breath. The adrenaline had worn off, but something else stayed, a strange, quiet focus, not grief, not rage, just the sharp clarity that comes when there's nothing left to defend. I returned to the apartment and opened every window. The air was stale, like it had been holding its breath with me for months. I didn't speak. I didn't curse. I didn't scream. I cleaned. I took down the photos, boxed up the anniversary gifts, cleared the shelves of every object that had her fingerprints, her scent, her laugh trapped in it. Not out of anger, out of necessity, because healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just making space. That night I slept on the couch, not because I had to, because the bed felt too familiar, too scripted, and I was done living inside someone else's story. In the morning, I made coffee, stared out the window as the sunrise poured over the rooftops like molten gold. The sky was quiet. So was I. I didn't cry. I just stood there and realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for answers, not for apologies, not for permission to begin again. The people who broke me were gone. But more importantly, they no longer occupied space inside me. That was the real ending. Not the court, not the lies, but that quiet moment in the morning light when I finally heard my own breath and knew, without question, it was mine again. I hadn't planned to say anything. Not at work. Not online. And not to anyone outside that courtroom. I told myself I didn't care what people believed. That silence was strength. But then the whispers started. Not just whispers. Distortions. A mutual friend texted me, "Hey, are you okay? Elena said you left because of burnout." Burnout. That's what she was telling people. Not betrayal. Not infidelity. Not the courtroom full of proof. Just burnout. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was pathetic. They were rewriting my story again. And this time, I wasn't letting them hold the pen. So I wrote. Not a rant. Not a thread. A statement. While I was caring for my dying father, my wife and my brother were booking hotel rooms behind my back. When I confronted them, they walked into court hand in hand, ready to split what they didn't build. They lost. I never wanted this to be public. But I won't let the truth be buried under curated captions and carefully cropped photos. If you were ever part of my life, you deserve to know what was done with my name. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. The internet did the rest. I logged off after posting, went for a walk, ate a sandwich on a bench in the sun like nothing had happened. And maybe, for the first time in a long while, nothing was happening. No pretending. No spirals. Just air and light and truth. When I checked my phone a few hours later, the post had gone viral. Comments, DMs, support from strangers and silence from people who used to send me Christmas cards. I didn't respond to any of them. This wasn't for attention. It was for the record. Let them scroll past. Let them whisper. Let them rethink every filtered photo they believed. I didn't care. Because now the truth was out there, and for once, it didn't belong to them. It belonged to me. There was no final confrontation. No storming out of a dinner. No dramatic doorstep speech. No screaming match in a parking lot. Just quiet. The kind that doesn't beg to be heard. The kind that stays. After the post, I didn't block anyone. I didn't clap back at the passive-aggressive comments or the vague status updates that were obviously about me. I just moved. I switched apartments. Sold the couch we used to sit on. Got rid of the dishes we picked out for the wedding registry. Gave the dog-eared novels she never finished to a secondhand bookstore. And I didn't tell anyone where I was going, because for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be found. One Sunday morning, I woke up and realized something strange I hadn't thought about either of them in days. No rage, no grief, just absence. And it didn't feel empty. It felt like a room. Room for music again. For long drives to nowhere. For conversations that didn't feel like negotiations. For a version of myself I used to recognize in the mirror. Before love turned into currency and loyalty became a punchline. Some nights, I still had to remind myself that silence wasn't danger anymore. That it wasn't the pause before a lie or a betrayal. Sometimes it was just peace. I never got an apology, and I didn't need one. Because I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for closure, not for redemption. Not for them to see what they lost. They could keep their silence. I had found mine.